For 47 cycles, Haven Colony had sent distress signals into the void. 23 raider warships circled the planet like carrion birds. 2,000 Lumen hostages waited in cargo holds. The Galactic Council had voted 6-6. No help was coming. Elder Theron stood at the observation dome of Haven's central spire. His translucent skin pulsed with faint blue light. The bioluminescence flickered with each beat of his ancient heart. Around him, the colony that had taken 3 generations to build was dying. Smoke rose from the eastern districts. Fires burned where crystalline structures once caught the light of Haven's twin suns. The raiders had been systematic, methodical. They took what they wanted and destroyed everything else. Theron's hands trembled as he touched the transmitter controls one final time. His fingers were long and delicate, too delicate for violence. The Lumen had evolved on a world without predators, without war, without the concept of cruelty. They had thought the universe would be the same. They had been wrong. The raiders circled Haven like carrion birds. 23 warships in a loose orbital formation. Each one bristled with weapons the Lumen could not comprehend, could not match, could not survive. Theron closed his eyes. His telepathic sense reached out across the colony. He felt the fear of his people. 2,000 had already been taken, herded into the raiders' cargo holds like livestock. The rest hid in whatever shelter they could find. He activated the transmitter one final time. This time, he used the quantum entanglement protocol. The death word, the forbidden signal that cut through space-time itself. It was dangerous, ancient. The Council had outlawed it for reasons Theron had never fully understood. Now he understood perfectly. When you are desperate enough, you break any law, cross any line, risk any consequence. The message went out, not to the Council, not to the distant capitals of civilized space. The death word searched for something else, someone else, anyone who would answer when the civilized universe turned away. Theron opened his eyes. In the sky above Haven, the Raider flagship hung like a blade. Its hull was scarred from 100 battles, its weapons charged with the light of a dozen conquered worlds. On its bridge, Warlord Scarvash smiled. The bridge of the Crimson Talons stank of old blood and ozone. Scarvash breathed it in like perfume. His forearms moved across the command console with practiced efficiency. Each hand controlled a different weapon system. Each finger knew the exact pressure to activate death. Scarvash was 487 years old. His species, the Cthral, lived long lives. Violent lives. He had spent 2 centuries as a raider. 200 years taking what he wanted from those too weak to stop him. His skin was deep crimson. Not the bright red of blood, but the dark color of old scars. Plates of natural armor covered his shoulders and back. His face was angular, sharp. 2 eyes in the front for depth perception, 2 on the sides for peripheral awareness, a predator's design. He studied the holographic display of Haven Colony. The Lumen population centers glowed soft blue, peaceful, undefended, perfect. "Report," Scarvash said. His voice was deep. Each word rumbled like distant thunder. His second-in-command, a scarred veteran named Drevok, stepped forward. Drevok had served under Scarvash for 60 years. He had 3 arms. The 4th had been lost in a battle Drevok never spoke about. "The Eastern District is secure, Warlord," Drevok said. 2,000 hostages in the holds. Minimal resistance. The Lumen don't fight back. "Of course they don't," Scarvash said. "They evolved without violence. They don't understand it. They can't comprehend what we are." Drevok nodded. "The Council hasn't responded to their distress signals. We've been monitoring all frequencies. Nothing, no rescue, no intervention." Scarvash's 4 hands curled into fists. "The Council is weak. They debate while worlds burn. They vote while innocents die. That's why places like Haven exist. That's why we exist. The strong take, the weak give. It's the oldest law in the universe." He turned to the weapons officer. "Prepare the harvest beams. We'll take their technology, their resources, anything of value. Then we burn what's left. Leave no witnesses." The weapons officer hesitated. "Warlord, we're detecting something unusual. A quantum signature. The Lumen just sent out a death word transmission." Scarvash laughed. The sound was like rocks grinding together. "A death word," the pacifists used forbidden technology. "Interesting. That means they're desperate enough to break their own rules." "Good. Desperation makes people careless." "Should we trace the signal?" the communications officer asked. "No need," Scarvash said. "Death words only work on specific receiver types. Ancient military protocols. The Council banned them 3,000 years ago. No one uses them anymore. No one monitors those frequencies. Their message went into empty space. They're alone. He walked to the main viewport. Haven's surface spread below. The colony lights twinkled like stars. Soon they would be ash. Continue operations, Scarvash ordered. I want this finished before any council bureaucrat bothers to send a strongly worded message about territorial violations. The bridge crew laughed. They had heard it all before. Council warnings, diplomatic protests, economic sanctions. None of it mattered. By the time the council finished debating, the Crimson Talon would be 3 systems away with holds full of plunder. Scarvash had raided 43 worlds in his career. Not once had anyone stopped him. Not once had anyone even tried. 5,000 light-years away, the Galactic Council chamber hummed with the voices of a dozen species. The amphitheater was ancient. Its walls were carved from a single asteroid. Holographic displays floated above each delegation's seat. The architecture spoke of a civilization that had ruled for millennia. High Arbiter Quavendrus sat at the center of the elevated platform. His species, the Vortai, were tall and thin. Quavendrus stood nearly 9 feet. His skin was pale gray. His eyes were large and dark. He was 921 years old. He had served the council for 4 centuries. He had seen empires rise. He had watched them fall. He had learned that the galaxy moved slowly. Change took time. Consensus required patience. The holographic display showed Haven Colony, smoke rising, fires burning. The data was 6 hours old. Light-speed transmission from the outer rim took time. By now, things could be much worse. The situation on Haven is regrettable, Quavendrus said. His voice was soft, almost musical. But we must consider our resources. The nearest council peacekeeping fleet is 3 weeks away at maximum velocity. Ambassador Eldon Greymark stood at his delegation's podium. Greymark was not human. His species, the Talaran, resembled humans superficially. 2 arms, 2 legs, a head with 2 eyes and a mouth. But his skin had a faint silver sheen. His eyes were solid black. No whites, no iris, just pools of darkness. Greymark was 73 years old, young by Talaran standards, but he had spent 50 years in diplomatic service. He had learned to read the room. Right now the room was reading, do nothing. High Arbiter, the Greymark said, Haven has been sending distress signals for 47 days. We knew this was coming. We had time to position assets, to prepare a response. Counselor Velreth leaned forward. Velreth was a Drathan. His species had thick scales and powerful builds. Velreth was 548 years old. He represented the military faction within the council. Ambassador Greymark speaks truth, Velreth said, but he fails to mention the political realities. Haven is in disputed space. The Kthral Marauder Syndicate claims salvage rights under the Frontier Accords. If we intervene, we set a precedent. Precedent, Greymark's voice rose. 2,000 lumen are in raider holds. How many more will die while we debate precedent? Quavendrus raised a hand. The gesture was small. The effect was immediate. The chamber fell silent. We will vote, Quavendrus said. All in favor of dispatching a peacekeeping fleet to Haven indicate now. 6 holographic indicators glowed green. 6 more glowed red. The vote was tied, 6-6. The measure fails, Quavendrus said. We will continue monitoring the situation and provide humanitarian aid once the immediate threat has passed. Greymark felt something break inside him. 50 years of service. 50 years of believing the council could make a difference. All of it shattered in a 6-6 vote. He looked down at his personal terminal. The death word transmission from Haven was still there. The quantum signature was unlike anything he had seen before. It was powerful, desperate, and it had one interesting characteristic. It wasn't addressed to the council. Greymark's fingers moved across the terminal. He accessed the signal analysis. The death word had a specific frequency signature, a target profile. Someone somewhere had programmed that transmission to reach a particular type of receiver. He ran a search through the council's communications database. Most death word protocols were military. Ancient, from the time before the Council unified known space. The search returned one result. Earth, Sol system, 3rd planet, humanity, the newcomers. The primitives who had only achieved faster than light travel 320 years ago. A blink of an eye in galactic terms. Greymark pulled up Earth's file. It was surprisingly thin. Humans kept to themselves. They had a handful of colonies, a small merchant fleet. They participated in council sessions but rarely spoke. They seemed content to observe, to learn, to stay on the periphery of galactic politics. There was one notation in the file that caught Greymark's attention. A security flag, restricted access. Level 7 clearance required. Greymark had level 5 clearance. Not enough. He made a decision. It was probably career-ending, possibly criminal, definitely unauthorized. He opened a communication channel, not through council systems. Those were monitored. He used his personal diplomatic credentials, a loophole in the security protocols. Ambassadors were allowed private communications with other species for back-channel negotiations. He addressed the message to Earth's council representative, a woman named Ambassador Torres, human, quiet, professional. She had served on the council for 12 years and spoken maybe a dozen times. The message was simple. Haven Colony is under attack. The council will not intervene. Your people have a death word receiver. I believe the Lumen sent their final distress to you. If you can help, please do. If this message causes you problems, delete it. If it causes me problems, I'll accept the consequences. Some things are more important than careers. Greymark sent the message. Then he sent something else. The complete data package on Haven. Location, situation, raider fleet composition, everything the council had. He sat back in his seat. Quavendrus was moving on to the next agenda item. Something about trade tariffs. Greymark didn't hear it. He was watching his terminal, waiting for a response that might never come. 4 minutes later, his terminal chimed. The response was from Earth, not from Ambassador Torres, from someone else. The sender identification was simple. Naval Command. The message was even simpler. Warden-class vessel dispatched. ETA 38 hours. Sit tight. Greymark read it 3 times. Warden-class. What was a Warden-class? Humans had merchant ships, a few system defense craft. Nothing in the council database mentioned military vessels. In 38 hours, Haven was 5,000 light-years from Sol system. The fastest council ships needed 3 weeks to make that journey. Humans claimed they could do it in 38 hours. Impossible. Greymark looked up at the council chamber. The debate over tariffs continued. No one had noticed his private communication. No one knew what he had done. He had just invited an unknown military force into council space, without authorization, without oversight. If the humans showed up and made things worse, it would be his fault. If they showed up and violated council protocols, his career was over. If they showed up and committed atrocities, he would share the blame. But if they showed up and saved 2,000 innocent lives, Greymark decided he could live with the consequences. On the bridge of the Crimson Talon, alarms suddenly blared. The communications officer's hands flew across his console. His face went pale. Well, paler than usual. His species was naturally gray-skinned. Warlord, the officer said, we've intercepted a transmission. I don't understand it. Scarvish turned from the viewport. What transmission? From who? It's addressed to Haven Colony, from Sol system. Earth. Scarvash's forearms crossed. Earth, the primitives. What do they want? The officer looked confused. The message is simple. It says, Warden-class vessel dispatched. ETA 38 hours. Dravok laughed. One vessel from a species that's barely left their home system. What are they going to do? File a diplomatic protest in person. Scarvash didn't laugh. He pulled up Earth's data on his personal console. Human, Terran, Death World origin. That last part was unusual. Death Worlds were rare. Planets so hostile that evolution became an arms race. Humanity had survived a planet that tried to kill them every day. But survival and military capability were different things. Earth had been in space for 3 centuries. The Cthral Marauder Syndicate had been raiding for 5,000 years. Experience mattered. Research Earth's military capabilities, Scarvash ordered. The tactical officer worked quickly. Warlord, there's almost nothing. Council database shows a handful of system defense ships, some armed merchant vessels. No major fleet, no capital ships, no record of military engagements. No record doesn't mean no capability, Scarvash said. It means they haven't needed to fight, or they've hidden what they can do. Drevik stepped closer. Warlord, with respect, we have 23 warships, combat tested, fully armed. Even if the humans send something military, we outnumber them. We have the advantage. Scarvash considered this. Drevok was right. Numbers mattered. And one ship, no matter how advanced, couldn't stand against a full raider fleet. Maintain current operations, Scarvash said, but increase alert status. I want all sensors active. If the humans send a ship, I want to see it coming. And when it arrives, Drevok asked. Scarvash showed his teeth. The Cthral had a lot of teeth. Then we teach the primitives why you don't interfere in syndicate business. Position the fleet. I want overlapping fire zones. If they're stupid enough to come here, we'll make sure they don't leave. The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency. 23 warships shifted into a defensive formation, a web of interlocking weapon ranges. Nothing could enter Haven's orbit without passing through multiple kill zones. Scarvash returned to the viewport. Below Haven burned, above his fleet waited, and somewhere in the darkness between the stars, a ship was coming. He wondered what it would look like. Probably some oversized merchant vessel with a few weapons bolted on. Humans were traders, not warriors. They made things, they sold things, they didn't fight. Scarvash had been raiding for 200 years. He knew prey when he saw it. Humans were prey. One ship wouldn't change that. He was wrong. 37 hours and 43 minutes later, the sensors detected something. The communications officer stared at his display. His hand shook. Warlord. Contact. Bearing 270. Range. Range is impossible. Define impossible, Scarvash said. The contact appeared at the system's edge. No hyperspace signature. No transition flash. 1 second there was nothing. The next second there was a ship. It's like it materialized out of empty space. Drevik moved to the sensor station. Mass reading. Unclear. The hull is absorbing active scans. I'm getting reflections, but they don't make sense. The ship is there, but sensors can't get a solid lock. Scarvash pulled up the tactical display. A single contact moved toward Haven. It was fast. Much faster than any ship had a right to be at sublight speeds. Visual as Scarvash demanded, the main view screen changed. The distant contact appeared. Even at maximum magnification, details were hard to make out. The ship's hull was black. Not painted black, not dark gray, but a black that seemed to absorb light. The edges were angular, sharp, unnatural. Identify ship class, Scarvash ordered. No match in the database, the tactical officer said. Configuration is unknown. Weapons are, I can't detect any weapons, Warlord. No weapons, Drevik sounded skeptical. They sent an unarmed ship. I didn't say unarmed, the officer corrected. I said I can't detect weapons. There's a difference. The hull configuration doesn't match any known design. There are no visible turrets, no launch tubes, no emitters. But that doesn't mean they're not there. Scarvash studied the approaching vessel. It moved with an eerie grace. No visible thrust, no engine wash. It simply glided through space like a predator through water. Hail them, Scarvash ordered. The communications officer worked his console. Channel open, Warlord. Scarvash activated his command frequency. His voice would carry across the void. Ship to ship. Direct communication. Unknown vessel. This is Warlord Scarvash of the Cathral Marauder Syndicate. You are entering a restricted salvage zone. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. For a long moment, there was no response. The black ship continued its approach. Steady, unhurried, inevitable. Then the speakers crackled. The voice that came through was human. Male. Deep. Calm. There was no fear in it. No hesitation. Just a statement of fact. Marauder Fleet, this is Captain Thaddeus Rourke of the Earth Vessel Executor. Haven Colony is under Earth protection. Release all hostages immediately and withdraw to minimum safe distance. You have 60 seconds to comply. The bridge of the Crimson Talon went silent. Every raider stared at the view screen, at the single black ship approaching their 23 warships. Drevik was the first to recover. He started laughing. They're serious, one ship against our entire fleet. Scarvash didn't laugh. Something about the human's voice bothered him. It wasn't the voice of someone making an empty threat. It was the voice of someone stating a fact, like announcing the weather or reading a schedule. Scan their ship again, Scarvash ordered. Full spectrum. I want to know what we're dealing with. The sensor officer worked frantically. Active scans are still being absorbed. I'm getting some thermal readings. The ship is cold, much colder than it should be. Hull temperature is barely above absolute zero. That shouldn't be possible for an active vessel. Weapons status, Scarvash asked. Still no visible weapons, but I'm detecting massive power signatures inside the hull. Energy levels are... Warlord, the power reading is equivalent to a small star. That can't be right. Scarvash felt a cold sensation in his gut. He had raided for 2 centuries. He had learned to trust his instincts. Right now his instincts were screaming. Battle stations, Scarvash ordered. All ships' weapons hot. Target the human vessel. Across the raider fleet, weapon systems activated. Energy cannons charged. Missile tubes loaded. Railguns spun up to firing speed. 23 warships trained their guns on one target. The executor continued its approach. It didn't change course, didn't accelerate, didn't even seem to notice it was now targeted by enough firepower to glass a planet. Scarvash opened the channel again. Human captain, I'm giving you one chance to withdraw. I have 23 warships. You have one. Your bravery is admirable. Your tactics are suicide. Rourke's voice came back, still calm, still measured. Warlord Scarvash, you have 45 seconds remaining. Dravok stepped closer to Scarvash. Orders? Scarvash watched the countdown timer on his display. 45 seconds, 44, 43. He had two choices: withdraw and lose everything, or call the humans' bluff and maintain his reputation. Bring 8 destroyers forward, Scarvash ordered. Fire a warning salvo across their bow. Let's see if they still feel brave when plasma is burning past their hull. 8 Marauder destroyers broke formation. Each one was 300 meters long. Each carried enough weapons to reduce a city to rubble. They moved into position, forming a firing line between the Executor and Haven. 30 seconds, Rourke's voice announced. The lead destroyer fired. A single plasma bolt. Bright blue, superheated to 1,000,000 degrees. It streaked across space toward the Executor. The bolt never reached its target. 15 kilometers from the Executor's hull, the plasma stopped. It froze in space, a sphere of blue fire hanging motionless against the stars. On the Crimson Talon, every sensor went haywire. The tactical officer's voice rose an octave. Warlord, the plasma is suspended in a gravitational field, but the field strength it's impossible. Nothing can generate that kind of localized gravity without a massive singularity. Fire again, Scarvash ordered. All 8 destroyers, full barrage. The destroyers obeyed. Plasma bolts, kinetic rounds, missiles, energy beams, everything they had. A wall of destruction that could shatter asteroids. All of it stopped. 15 kilometers from the Executor, a sphere of frozen death grew. Plasma bolts hung suspended. Missiles floated motionless. Kinetic rounds stopped mid-flight. Energy beams refracted into harmless light. The sphere expanded as more weapons fire added to it. A perfect globe of destruction held in stasis by forces the Raiders couldn't comprehend. 20 seconds, Rourke announced. Scarvash stared at the display. His 4 hands gripped the command console. Full fleet assault, all ships fire. Overwhelm whatever technology they're using. 15 warships opened fire simultaneously. The remaining 5 held position around Haven's hostages as insurance. The barrage was apocalyptic. Enough firepower to crack a moon. Enough energy to boil oceans. The sphere around the Executor grew larger, brighter. The suspended weapons fire created a shell of frozen violence. Still, the black ship sat at the center untouched, unmoved. 10 seconds, Rourke said. Scarvash's mind raced. This wasn't possible. This violated every physical law he knew. Ships didn't have this kind of defensive capability. Nothing did. Unless the humans had found something, built something, weaponized something that the rest of the galaxy didn't understand. 5 seconds, Warlord Dravok said quietly. We should withdraw. 4 seconds. Scarvash's pride warred with his survival instinct. He had never retreated. Never. Not in 200 years. 3 seconds. But he had also never faced anything like this. 2 seconds. All ships ceased fire and 1. Rourke's voice changed, still calm, still measured, but now there was something underneath. Not anger, not hatred, just finality. Judgment rendered. The sphere of suspended weapons fire collapsed, not inward, outward. Every plasma bolt, every missile, every kinetic round, every energy beam, all of it reversed course in the same instant. The weapons fire that the Raiders had sent now returned to them, but not at the same strength, magnified. Each plasma bolt came back 10 times hotter. Each kinetic round returned with 10 times the velocity. Each missile detonated with 10 times the force. The 8 destroyers at the front never had time to evade. The reversed barrage hit them simultaneously. Hulls designed to withstand combat vaporized like paper in a furnace. Shields meant to deflect energy weapons collapsed under impossible force. 4.7 seconds. That's how long it took for all 8 destroyers to die. Not disabled, not damaged, not destroyed in any conventional sense. They simply ceased to exist, crushed down to atom-thick disks of compressed matter, like flowers pressed in a book, flat, lifeless, unrecognizable. 3,847 crew members died in those 4.7 seconds. They didn't have time to scream, didn't have time to understand what was happening. One moment they were firing, the next moment they were gone. On the Crimson Talon, the bridge crew stood frozen. No one spoke. No one moved. They stared at the space where 8 warships had been, where now there was only debris. Rourke's voice filled the silence. Remaining vessels, power down weapons and prepare to be boarded. Hostages will be transferred immediately. Any resistance will be met with the same response. You have seen what we are capable of. Do not test us further. Scarvash couldn't speak. His 4 hands trembled. His mind couldn't process what had just happened. 8 destroyers. Gone. In less than 5 seconds. One ship had done that. One human ship. The sensor officer's voice was a whisper. Warlord, the executor is moving. It's approaching our position. Scarvash found his voice. It came out broken. Defeated. All ships stand down. Lower shields. Comply with their demands. Drevok stared at him. Warlord. Do it, Scarvash screamed. The sound was ragged, desperate. Do it now before they kill us all. Across the raider fleet, weapons powered down, shields dropped. 15 warships that moments ago had been aggressive predators now hung in space like frightened prey. The executor glided past the debris field where the destroyers had been. It moved toward the Crimson Talon. As it passed, Scarvash finally saw details. The hull was seamless. No welds, no seams. It looked grown rather than built, and along its surface barely visible were patterns, like circuitry or veins. They pulsed with faint blue light. Rourke's voice came again. This time it was a broadcast, wide band. Every ship in the system would hear it, every planet, every station. Attention all vessels and installations. Haven Colony is now under the protection of Earth. Any further aggression against this world or its inhabitants will be considered an act of war against humanity. Withdraw immediately and do not return. On Haven's surface, Elder Theron stood in his observation dome. He had felt the battle through his telepathic senses, felt the fear of the raiders, felt the moment of their death, and now he felt something else. Hope. Above his world, the black ship hung like a guardian, like an angel of death that had come in answer to a prayer. The Lumen had no concept of violence, no understanding of war, but they understood salvation. The death word had been answered, not by the civilized council, not by their galactic neighbors, but by beings from a distant world who had heard a cry for help and responded with overwhelming force. The executor remained in Haven orbit for exactly 4 hours and 17 minutes. In that time, all 2,000 Lumen hostages were transferred safely. The raider fleet was cataloged and stripped of weapons. Scarvash and his command staff were detained for transport to council authorities. And then as quickly as it had arrived, the executor departed. One moment it hung in orbit. The next it was gone, no hyperspace flash, no transition effect, just empty space where a warship had been. Elder Theron watched it go. His telepathic sense could no longer detect Captain Rourke's presence. But he had felt something in those 4 hours. A mind unlike any he had encountered. Human, but more than human. Disciplined, controlled. And underneath all that control, a capacity for violence that terrified and reassured in equal measure. The Lumen were safe. The raiders were defeated. And somewhere in the council chambers, powerful beings were about to learn that the galaxy's newest members were far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The warden had answered the call, and nothing would ever be the same. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 18 hours after the Haven incident. Word had spread fast. 23 Marauder warships defeated by a single vessel. 8 destroyers destroyed in less than 5 seconds. The impossible made real. The amphitheater was full. Every delegation had sent representatives. The gallery seats were packed with observers, journalists, military analysts. Species that hadn't attended a council session in decades now crowded the ancient chamber. Ambassador Eldon Greymark stood at the central podium. His silver-sheen skin caught the light from the holographic displays around him. His solid black eyes scanned the assembled delegates. He had prepared for this moment, rehearsed what he would say, how he would present the data. None of his preparation mattered now. The truth spoke for itself. Honored delegates, Greymark began. 63 hours ago, Haven Colony faced extinction. The council voted 6-6 against intervention. I took it upon myself to contact Earth directly. High Arbiter Covendrus leaned forward in his seat. The ancient Vortai's large dark eyes reflected the holographic light. His voice was soft, controlled, but underneath there was steel. You acted without authorization, Ambassador. You invite an unknown military force into council space, without oversight, without protocol. Do you understand the gravity of what you've done? Greymark nodded. I do, High Arbiter. I violated council procedure. I exceeded my authority. I accept whatever consequences you deem appropriate. But 2,000 Lumen are alive because of that violation. I will not apologize for their survival. Counselor Velrith stood. The Draythan's scaled body radiated tension. His thick hands gripped the podium rail. Velrith was 548 years old. He had commanded fleets, fought wars. He knew military capability when he saw it. Show us the data, Velrith demanded. Show us what these humans did. Greymark activated the holographic display, sensor recordings, communications logs, visual captures from the raider ships. The presentation lasted 12 minutes. Every delegate could see it, study it, analyze it. When it finished, the chamber was silent. Kuvendris broke the silence. This violates every law of physics we understand. Gravitational manipulation of that precision requires technology centuries beyond our current capabilities. How long have the humans possessed this unknown, Greymark said? Earth's council file is remarkably sparse. They keep to themselves, trade occasionally, attend sessions, but rarely speak. We know very little about their actual capabilities. A delegate from the Elthari collective stood. The Elthari were insectoid, compound eyes, chitinous exoskeletons. The delegate's translator converted clicks into standard galactic speech. I move that we immediately investigate Earth's military capabilities. They represent a clear and present danger to galactic stability. Velrith nodded. I second that motion. We cannot allow a species with this kind of power to operate without oversight, without accountability. Greymark saw which way this was heading. The council was afraid. Fear bred stupidity. Stupidity bred confrontation. And confrontation with beings who could do what the executor did would end only one way. Before we vote, Greymark said carefully, I suggest we examine Earth's complete history, not just this incident, all of it. Kuvendris nodded. Access the restricted files. Level 7 clearance. I want everything we have on humanity. A junior aide moved to a terminal. His fingers worked quickly. The holographic display changed. New data appeared. Files that had been locked, hidden, classified for reasons most delegates had never questioned. What appeared made several delegates gasp. The first file was 41 years old. The Kryn hegemony, a civilization that had ruled 12 star systems for 2,100 years. Expansionist, aggressive, militaristic. They had encountered a human colony on a world called New Horizon. The colony was small, 3,000 settlers, agricultural, undefended. The Kryn had issued an ultimatum. Abandon the planet or face annexation. The humans had requested time to evacuate. The Kryn had given them 48 hours. Instead of evacuating, the humans sent a message to Earth. A simple distress call, help requested, colony under threat. Earth's response time was 6 hours. 340 Kryn warships had assembled at New Horizon. A show of force, a demonstration of power. They were going to make an example of the upstart humans, show them their place in the galactic hierarchy. The Kryn fleet never returned home. The Council database had a single entry about the incident. Kryn hegemony fleet lost in deep space. Cause unknown. No survivors. No wreckage recovered. But now with level 7 clearance, the truth emerged. The Kryn fleet had engaged human vessels. The battle lasted 17 minutes. When it ended, all 340 Kryn warships were gone. Not destroyed in the conventional sense. Compressed. Crushed, reduced to debris fields of matter so dense they formed temporary gravity wells. Human casualties. 0. The second file was 19 years old. The Thexian swarm, a hive-minded species that traveled in vast bioships. Living vessels. They had attempted to blockade the human colony of redemption. Their goal was simple: force the humans to share their agricultural technology. The Thexian homeworlds were experiencing famine. 1,200 bioships surrounded redemption. Each ship was enormous, organic, capable of self-repair. The Thexians had used this tactic on 6 other species. Blockade, starve, negotiate from strength. The blockade lasted 8 minutes. Human vessels arrived. Unknown configuration. They released something into space. A silver mist, nanoscale machines. The mist spread through the Thexian bioships like infection through tissue. In 8 minutes, every bioship was sterilized, not killed, sterilized, rendered biologically inert. Dead husks floating in space. The Thexian swarm sued for peace immediately. They agreed to technology sharing, medical cooperation. They never threatened humans again. The third file was 7 years old. The Corvin theocracy, a fundamentalist civilization that believed all other species were inferior, destined to serve the Corvin as divine right. They had captured a human exploration vessel. 63 crew members. The Corvin demanded ransom, technology, resources, territorial concessions. They gave Earth 1 week to comply. Earth's response was not negotiation. 6 days after the demand, the Corvin homeworld was occupied. Not bombarded, not destroyed, occupied. Human forces landed, captured government buildings, dismantled the theocracy, freed the enslaved populations of 4 different species the Corvin had subjugated. The entire operation took 6 days. The Corvin military never managed to mount effective resistance. Their weapons didn't work. Their communication systems failed. Their defenses simply stopped functioning. When it was over, the Corvin theocracy no longer existed. In its place was the Corvin Republic. Democratic, secular, allied with Earth. The 63 human crew members were recovered unharmed. But the database also showed other files, different interactions, peaceful ones. The Turel Confederacy had approached Earth 52 years ago. They offered trade, technology exchange, cultural cooperation. Earth agreed. Over 5 decades, the partnership flourished. The Turel economy grew by 340%. Human colonies received advanced medical technology. Both species benefited. The Javask Republic had similar success. 29 years of cooperation with Earth. Medical research partnerships that doubled Javask lifespan. Agricultural techniques that ended food scarcity. Educational exchanges that advanced both civilizations. Species that attacked humans faced overwhelming force. Species that cooperated with humans prospered. Species that ignored humans were left alone. It was a simple equation. Choose your relationship. Face the consequences. Greymark watched the delegates process this information. Some looked terrified. Others looked calculating. A few looked hopeful. Velreth spoke first. His voice was hard, angry. This proves my point. Earth has waged secret wars across the galaxy, destroyed civilizations, occupied worlds. They're a threat that must be contained. Or, Greymark countered, they're a power that responds proportionally. The Kryn sent 340 warships to threaten a farming colony. The Thexians blockaded innocents. The Corvin enslaved people. In each case, Earth's response matched the threat. And what happens, Velreth said, when Earth decides we're a threat, when they turn this power against the Council itself? Quavendrus raised his hand. The chamber quieted. The question before us is clear. Do we treat Earth as a danger to be opposed or a mystery to be understood? The vote was close, 9-3. The Council would send a delegation to Earth, not a military force, not a tribunal, a diplomatic mission, to understand, to learn, to assess. Quavendrus looked directly at Greymark. Ambassador, you began this. You will finish it. You will lead the delegation to Sol System. You will meet with Earth's leadership, and you will return with answers. Greymark felt the weight of that assignment. His career had survived. Barely. Now he was being sent to the one place in the galaxy that terrified the Council, to ask questions no one was sure they wanted answered. I accept, High Arbiter, Greymark said. One more thing, Quavendrus added. The delegation departs in 3 days. Travel time to Sol System is approximately 3 weeks at maximum Council velocity. Use that time to prepare. Earth has hidden its capabilities for 3 centuries, and they will not reveal them easily. Greymark nodded. 3 weeks to plan questions. 3 weeks to anticipate answers. 3 weeks to wonder if he would return at all. The Council diplomatic vessel Harmony was built for comfort, not speed. Its interior was elegant. Curved walls, soft lighting. Every species' environmental needs accommodated. Greymark's quarters were spacious. A bed designed for Talaran physiology. A workspace with quantum communication access. Windows that showed the stars streaming past. 19 days into the journey, Greymark sat at that workspace. Around him, holographic displays showed everything the Council database contained about humanity. Every interaction, every trade agreement, every conflict, every piece of data. He was looking for a pattern within the pattern. The files showed what Earth did, but they didn't explain why. Why hide such capabilities? Why not join the Council as a major power? Why operate from the shadows? Greymark pulled up the Haven battle data again. He had watched it dozens of times, the executor's approach, the methodical destruction. But this time he noticed something. In the moment before the destroyers died, there was a microtransmission. Ship to ship, from Executor to Crimson Talon. The Council sensors had recorded it. Greymark isolated the transmission, enhanced it, played it back. Captain Rourke's voice. But this time there was something underneath the calm. A weight, a burden. Judgment rendered. Not attack initiated, not weapons free. Judgment, like a court pronouncing sentence, like justice being served. Greymark sat back. He understood now, or thought he did. Earth didn't see itself as a military power. It saw itself as something else, a force for balance, a corrective mechanism. They responded to distress. They punished aggression. They rewarded cooperation. They were judges, wardens, guardians of an order they had imposed on themselves. The question was why. On the 20th day, the Harmony's sensors detected something impossible. They had just entered Sol system, still 3 days from Earth at normal velocity, but the sensors showed contacts, multiple contacts, all around them. The ship's captain, a methodical being named Valoris, contacted Greymark immediately. "Ambassador, we have a situation." Greymark reached the bridge quickly. The main view screen showed what the sensors had detected. Ships, human ships, 43 of them, all the same configuration as the Executor. Black hulls, angular design. They hung in space like silent sentinels, a formation that surrounded Harmony completely. "When did they appear?" Greymark asked. Valorous checked his instruments. "They didn't appear. They were already here. Stealth systems far beyond our detection capability. They allowed us to see them." One of the human ships moved closer, its communication system activated. A woman's voice, professional, calm, with an undertone of authority that suggested long command experience. "Council Vessel Harmony, this is Admiral Cordelia Ravencroft of Earth Naval Command. Welcome to Sol System. You are cleared to approach Earth orbit. We will escort you to Bastion Station. Please maintain current heading and velocity." The channel closed before Greymark could respond. Around Harmony, the 43 warships began to move. They formed an honor guard, or a prison escort. Greymark wasn't sure which. Valorous looked at Greymark. "Orders, Ambassador." "We accept their escort," Greymark said. "We came here for answers. We won't get them by running." 3 days later, Earth filled the view screen. Greymark had seen images, read descriptions, but nothing prepared him for the reality. The planet was beautiful. Blues and greens swirled with white clouds. Continents were visible. Oceans vast. A single large moon hung nearby. The system's star was yellow. Ordinary. Unremarkable. But in orbit around this ordinary planet were structures that defied belief. 47 Warden-class vessels, each one 18 kilometers long. Their black hulls absorbed light from the sun. They moved in synchronized patterns. Orbital mechanics turned into art. And between the warships, a station. Massive. Crystalline. It caught sunlight and refracted it into rainbow patterns across the planet below. "That's Bastion Station," Valorous said quietly. "I'm receiving docking instructions now." Harmony approached the station slowly. Up close, the scale became clear. The station was huge, kilometers across, multiple docking rings, defensive platforms, sensor arrays that probably saw everything in the system. The docking procedure was smooth, professional. Within an hour, Greymark stood in an airlock waiting for permission to board. The airlock cycled. The inner door opened. Standing on the other side was a human woman. She was 61 years old, though Greymark had to check the file to know that. Her hair was white, pure white, pulled back in a tight bun. Her face showed lines. Experience, years of command. Her left arm was cybernetic, advanced prosthetic from shoulder to fingertips. It moved with fluid grace. She wore a dark uniform. No decorations, no medals, just rank insignia, 4 stars on each shoulder. "Ambassador Greymark," she said. Her voice matched the one from the transmission. "I'm Admiral Cordelia Ravencroft. Welcome to Bastion Station." Greymark performed the traditional Talaran greeting, a slight bow, hands open. "Admiral Ravencroft, thank you for receiving us. I apologize for any inconvenience our unexpected visit may have caused." Ravencroft's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. "Unexpected Ambassador, we've been tracking your ship since you entered Council space 19 days ago. We knew you were coming before you did." She turned and walked into the station. Greymark followed. The corridors were utilitarian. Clean, well-lit, human crew members moved with purpose. They acknowledged Ravencroft with nods, quick salutes. No one stared at Greymark. They had seen aliens before. "How many species have visited Bastion?" Greymark asked. "You're the seventh," Ravencroft said. "The others were all trade partners. You're the first council delegation." They entered a conference room. The far wall was transparent, a window that showed Earth below. Cities glittered on the night side, clouds moved slowly over oceans. It looked peaceful, safe. Nothing like a world that commanded the most powerful military force in known space. Ravencroft gestured to a seat. The chair adjusted automatically to Talaran proportions. "Please sit. I imagine you have questions." Greymark sat. He pulled up his personal datapad. He had prepared a list. Diplomatic questions, carefully worded, designed to gather information without causing offense. He looked at Ravencroft, at the cybernetic arm, at the white hair, at the eyes that had seen things he couldn't imagine. He put the datapad away. Greymark asked, "How does a species that's been in space for 300 years possess technology that shouldn't exist? How do you hide 47 warships? How do you defeat fleets that outnumber you hundreds to one?" Ravencroft was quiet for a long moment. She looked out the window at Earth. When she spoke, her voice carried weight. History. Burden. 311 years ago, our Mars colony found something. A structure. Underground. Buried under kilometers of rock. It took us 40 years to excavate it. Another 30 to understand what we'd found. She activated a holographic display. An image appeared. Ancient. Alien. Beautiful. A vault. Crystalline walls. And inside, suspended in stasis fields, weapons. "The architects," Ravencroft said. "That's what we call them. We don't know their real name. They're extinct. Have been for 50,000 years. But they left this behind." Greymark leaned forward. The weapons in the hologram were unlike anything he'd seen. Sleek. Organic-looking. They seemed to pulse with internal light. 40 singularity weapons, Ravencroft continued, each one capable of manipulating space-time at a local level, generating artificial gravity wells, folding space, creating fields that can stop matter, energy, even light itself. "The architects built these," Greymark asked. "They built them to fight something called the Devourer Swarm, an enemy we still don't fully understand, something that consumes galaxies, literally. It breaks down matter, absorbs energy, leaves nothing behind but void." The hologram changed, showed astronomical data, galaxy maps, red zones spreading like infection across the display. "The Devourer destroyed over 200 galaxies," Ravencroft said. "It was coming here, to the Milky Way. The architects built the singularity weapons as a last defense, but they died before they could use them. Their civilization collapsed. We don't know why. Maybe the Devourer, maybe something else. All we found was the vault, the weapons, and a database warning us what was coming." Greymark felt cold. "The Devourer, is it still out there?" "Yes. The architect's data suggests it operates on a cycle. It consumes, hibernates, wakes, consumes again. The cycle is approximately 10,000 years. By our calculations, the Devourer will reach the Milky Way in 150 years. The room fell silent. Outside the window, Earth turned peacefully, unaware. Or maybe not. Maybe every human knew. Maybe they lived with this knowledge every day. "When we found the weapons," Ravencroft said, "we faced a choice. We debated for 74 years, the longest sustained discussion in human history. There were 3 factions." She held up one finger. "Destroy the weapons, too dangerous, too tempting. We feared what we might become if we kept them." A second finger. "Use them for conquest. Take our place as the galaxy's dominant power. Ensure human survival through strength." A third finger. "Keep them. Use them only for defense. Become guardians instead of conquerors." The final vote, Ravencroft said quietly, was 51% to 49%. Defense won, barely. "We built the Warden-class vessels around the singularity weapons. We trained crews, established protocols, and we made a promise to ourselves." "What promise?" Greymark asked. "That we would bear this burden so others wouldn't have to. That we would use this power only to protect, never to conquer. We would respond to distress. We would stop aggressors. We would guard the helpless. And we would do it quietly, without seeking credit, without demanding tribute." The door to the conference room opened. A man entered, Greymark recognized him immediately from the Haven files. Captain Thaddeus Rourke, 46 years old, salt and pepper hair, a scar across his left eye. He wore the same dark uniform as Ravencroft. His posture was military, precise, but his eyes showed something else: weariness, cost. Ambassador Greymark, Rourke said, "We've met in a manner of speaking." "Captain Rourke," Greymark replied, "thank you for what you did at Haven. 2,000 lives." Rourke held up a hand. "I did my job, nothing more." He sat down across from Greymark. Ravencroft gestured for him to continue. Rourke pulled up his sleeve. His forearm was covered in scars. Thin lines, precise, surgical, dozens of them. "Each one of these," Rourke said, "represents a time I could have used full power. Each one is a reminder that I chose restraint instead. The singularity weapons have multiple settings. At Haven, I used 0.03% capacity. 0.03. The weapon reversal that destroyed 8 ships, that was the minimum response." He let that sink in. "If I had used 1% capacity, the entire Raider fleet would have ceased to exist. At 10%, the planet would have been in danger. At full capacity, the star itself would be at risk." Greymark felt his stomach tighten. "You're saying the weapons can destroy stars?" "The architects built them to fight something that eats galaxies," Ravencroft said. "Yes, they can destroy stars, planets, entire systems. We live with that knowledge, we train with it. We work every day to make sure we never have to use it." She stood and walked to the window. "We're not special, Ambassador. We're not superior. We're just the species that found these weapons first. And we made a choice, a hard choice, to be guardians instead of gods." "But you can't do it alone," Greymark said. "The Devourer is coming. 150 years, even with these weapons." "We're not enough," Ravencroft finished. "No, we're not. That's why we've been reaching out, slowly, carefully." The Tyrell Confederacy. The Javask Republic. Others. Species willing to cooperate, to work together, to prepare for what's coming. Rourke leaned forward. "We don't want subjects, Ambassador. We don't want an empire. We want allies, partners, species that can stand with us when the Devourer arrives. Because when it comes, it won't care about politics, about borders, about who ruled what. It will simply consume." Greymark thought about the council, about the debates, the votes, the careful balancing of power and influence, all of it meaningless in the face of what these humans described. "The council needs to know," Greymark said. "All of this, the architects, the weapons, the Devourer, everything." "We know," Ravencroft said. "That's why you're here. That's why we let you see. We're done hiding. The Devourer is too close. We need the galaxy to unite, to prepare, to stand together." She turned from the window. Her cybernetic arm caught the light from Earth below. "But here's the question, Ambassador. Will the Council believe you? Will they accept that the primitives who've been in space for 3 centuries are telling the truth? Or will they see this as a threat, an attempt to manipulate them?" Greymark didn't have an answer. He thought about Velreth, about the hardliners who saw Earth as a danger, about the fear in the Council chamber. Fear made people stupid, and stupid people made fatal mistakes. "I'll tell them the truth," Greymark said finally. "What they do with it is their choice." Ravencroft nodded slowly. "Then let me show you one more thing, something that will help them understand." She led Greymark through the station, down corridors, past laboratories where humans and aliens worked together, past training rooms where soldiers practiced, past observation decks where Earth turned below. They reached a secured door. Ravencroft pressed her palm to a scanner. The door slid open. Inside was a chamber, spherical. At its center floated a holographic display. But this wasn't like any display Greymark had seen. It showed the galaxy, the Milky Way, but with additions, overlays, data that came from sources Greymark couldn't identify. "This is our early warning system," Ravencroft said. "It monitors the galactic edge, looking for signs of the Devourer. We've detected anomalies, distortions in space-time at the rim. They're faint, distant, but they're growing stronger." The display zoomed in, showed the anomalies, ripples in space, like something massive moving through dimensions humans couldn't normally perceive. 150 years, Ravencroft said. "That's our best estimate, but it could be sooner. It could be later. We don't know for certain. What we do know is that it's coming. And when it arrives, no single species will survive alone. Not us, not the Council, not anyone." She looked at Greymark. "Go back to the Council, tell them everything, show them this data, and ask them one simple question. When the devourer comes, will you stand with us or will you face it alone? Greymark stood in that spherical chamber, watching the holographic galaxy turn, watching the anomalies pulse at its edge. He thought about his long life, 73 years, 50 years in service. He had seen the council at its best and its worst. This would test them like nothing ever had. I'll deliver your message, Admiral, Greymark said. But I have one question. Why show me all this? Why trust me? Ravencroft smiled, genuinely this time. Because you broke protocol to save 2,000 lumen you'd never met. Because you risked your career to do what was right. Because Captain Rourke read your file and said, this one understands. And I trust Captain Rourke's judgment. Rourke nodded. You asked the right question back at Haven, Ambassador. Not, how do we stop you, but how can we help? That's the difference between fear and wisdom. Greymark felt something shift inside him. A weight, a responsibility. He came here as a council delegate. He would leave as something else. A bridge, a connection between old power and new. When do I depart? Greymark asked. Whenever you're ready, Ravencroft said. But before you go, there's someone who wants to meet you. She led him to another part of the station, a medical bay. Inside, a lumen stood waiting. His skin pulsed with soft blue light. He was old, ancient by lumen standards, but his eyes were bright, alert. Ambassador Greymark, the lumen said, I am Elder Theron of Haven Colony. Admiral Ravencroft tells me you are the one who called for help, the one who brought Captain Rourke to our world. Greymark bowed. I only made a communication elder. Captain Rourke did the rest. Theron stepped closer. His telepathic presence was gentle, non-invasive. I have lived 300 years, Ambassador. I have never felt minds like the humans possess. They contain darkness, yes, capacity for terrible violence, but also light, discipline, control. They choose restraint when they could choose destruction. That is the mark of true strength. He placed a delicate hand on Greymark's arm. Tell your council this. The humans saved us not because they had to, not because they wanted something in return. They saved us because we asked, because we needed help. And that, Ambassador, is the most powerful thing I have ever witnessed. Greymark felt the weight of those words, the simple truth in them. He thought about the council, about their debates, their politics, their fear of change. Earth had changed the galaxy without asking permission, without seeking approval. They had simply done what needed to be done. Now the galaxy had to decide how to respond. Greymark left Bastion Station 3 days later. The journey back to council space would take 3 weeks. 3 weeks to prepare his report. 3 weeks to find the words that would convince the council to see Earth not as a threat, but as humanity's best hope for survival. As Harmony departed, Greymark stood at the window. He watched Earth shrink in the distance, watched the 47 Warden-class vessels maintain their eternal vigil, watched the star that had given birth to these strange, powerful, terrifying, hopeful beings. And he wondered if the galaxy was ready for the truth. 150 years, that's all they had. 150 years to unite, to prepare, to stand together against the dark. The Wardens had answered the call at Haven. Soon the entire galaxy would have to answer a much bigger call. The only question was whether they would respond with wisdom or fear. Greymark intended to make sure it was wisdom, even if he had to spend the rest of his life convincing them. 2 years changed everything. Ambassador Eldon Greymark stood in the same council amphitheater where he had once been censured for unauthorized contact with Earth. But now the seat he occupied was different, higher, more prominent, the seat of the High Arbiter. The delegates had elected him by a narrow margin, 7 votes to 5, the same split that had characterized every major decision since Haven. The galaxy was divided. Half saw the future, half clung to the past. Greymark looked older now. The silver sheen of his skin had dulled slightly. Lines creased his face. 75 years of life, 52 years of service, and 2 years of the hardest work he'd ever done, building an alliance from scratch. The holographic display showed the current state of the Warden Covenant. 31 species, not a majority of the galaxy. But enough to matter, enough to make a difference. The Turel Confederacy had joined first, then the Javask Republic, species that already had relationships with Earth. They brought others, trade partners, neighbors, allies who trusted their judgment. Haven Colony was rebuilt now. Crystalline spires rose again toward twin suns, but they were different, stronger. Human engineering reinforced lumen aesthetics. Beauty met function. The colony had a defense grid now. Not weapons, the Lumens still refused those, but shields, early warning systems, and a direct communication link to the nearest warden patrol. Elder Theron walked the rebuilt streets every day. His telepathic range had expanded with age. He could sense the whole colony now, feel the peace, the safety, the future taking root. The combined Covenant fleet numbered 4,100 ships. Respectable, not enough to challenge the old empires. But supplemented by 40 Warden-class vessels, it became formidable, unstoppable. Economic data showed the benefits of cooperation. Covenant members experienced average growth of 67%. Technology sharing, trade agreements, medical advances, educational exchanges. Species working together achieved what isolation never could. But not everyone saw it that way. The Krevtar Empire had ruled 12 star systems for 8,000 years. Their civilization was ancient when most current council members were still primitive. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had outlasted challenges, survived catastrophes, endured. They would endure this too. Admiral Torvak stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. 512 years old. He had commanded fleets for 3 centuries, won 47 major engagements, never lost a battle, never retreated. His species, the Krevatar, were imposing. 8 feet tall, 4 arms, thick armored hides that could withstand vacuum exposure for short periods. They were warriors, bred for conquest, raised for command. Torvak looked at the strategic display. The border between Krevtar space and Covenant territory glowed red, contested, disputed, dangerous. Status of the fleet, Torvak asked. His second-in-command Commander Gerald consulted his instruments. Gerald was young by Krevtar standards, only 203 years old. He had served under Torvak for 80 years. 214 warships assembled, Admiral. All systems nominal. Crews ready. We await your command. Torvak studied the display. 214 ships, the largest Krevtar fleet assembled in a century. More than enough to make a statement. To remind the galaxy that some powers would not bow, would not bend, would not submit to upstart humans and their coalition of the weak. The door to the bridge opened. A diplomat entered, Ambassador Greymark, the silver-skinned Talaran who now claimed to speak for the Covenant. Greymark approached the command platform. His movements were careful, measured. The bridge of a Krevtar warship was not designed for smaller species. Everything was scaled for 8-foot warriors. Admiral Torvak, Greymark said, thank you for agreeing to meet. Torvak did not look at him. I agreed to nothing. You requested permission to board. I granted it out of curiosity. Speak your piece, then leave. Greymark pulled up a portable display. Admiral, I come to offer the Krevtar Empire membership in the Warden Covenant. We believe your species has much to contribute. Your military expertise, your technological advances, your long history. And in return, Torvak asked, in return you receive the protection of the Covenant, access to shared resources, partnership in preparing for the Devourer threat. Torvak laughed. The sound was deep, harsh, like stones grinding. The Devourer, the great threat that only humans can see. How convenient, how perfectly timed to justify their military expansion. Admiral, the data is available for review, the architect's records, the astronomical observations, the anomalies at the galactic rim. All of it points to, I know what the data suggests, Torvak interrupted. I also know that empires have used fear of external threats to consolidate power since the dawn of civilization. The humans are no different. They found ancient weapons. They hide behind noble rhetoric. But their goal is the same as every empire before them: domination. Greymark felt the weight of those words, the cynicism, the refusal to see beyond old patterns. The Covenant is voluntary, Admiral. No one is forced to join. No one is conquered. We simply offer partnership. Partnership. Torvak finally looked at Greymark. His 4 eyes were cold, hard. Is that what you call it when the strongest dictate terms to the weak, when those with ancient weapons demand compliance? We have a different word for it. Subjugation. Admiral, please, I understand your concerns, but the threat is real. The Devourer will not care about your sovereignty, your history, your pride. It will simply consume. Torvak's forearms crossed. Then let it come. The Krevtar have survived for 8,000 years. We will survive this too, without bowing to humans, without surrendering our independence. Greymark tried one more time. Admiral Torvak, I have seen what the humans can do. I have stood on their station. spoken with their leaders. They are not what you think. They chose restraint when they could have chosen conquest. They bear burdens you cannot imagine. And that, Torvak said quietly, is precisely why they are dangerous. Power without the will to use it is weakness. The humans claim to be guardians, but guardians become tyrants. Always, it is the way of things. He gestured to the exit. You have delivered your message. Now leave, before I decide that your presence here constitutes a provocation. Greymark left the Eternal Dominion, knowing he had failed. The Krevitar would not join peacefully. They would have to be convinced another way. Or they would have to learn the hard way. 3 weeks later, the Krevitar fleet moved. 214 warships crossed into Covenant space. Not an invasion, not yet. A demonstration, a show of force, a message to the galaxy that some powers would not submit. They positioned themselves at the threshold gate, a strategic choke point between Krevitar territory and Covenant worlds. Control the gate, control access to a dozen systems. It was a calculated move, aggressive but defensible, a challenge that demanded response. Greymark received the reports in his council chambers. He had hoped for more time, more diplomacy, more chances to convince the Krevitar of their error. But time had run out. He opened a secure channel to Bastion Station, to Admiral Ravencroft, to the being who now commanded Earth's response to galactic crises. Admiral, we have a situation. Ravencroft appeared on the holographic display. She looked older. The white hair was thinner. The cybernetic arm had been upgraded. New scars marked her face. 2 years of constant vigilance left their mark. I'm aware, High Arbiter. The Krevitar fleet. 214 ships. They're testing us. What do you recommend? Ravencroft was quiet for a moment. How many lives are you willing to risk to prove a point? Greymark understood the question. As few as possible. Preferably none. Then we send one ship. Let them see. Let them understand. Give them a chance to choose differently. One ship against 214. One is all we need, Beth. The channel closed. Greymark sat back in his chair. He thought about Haven, about 8 destroyers crushed in 4.7 seconds, about the pattern that had emerged over 2 years. Aggression met overwhelming force. Cooperation met generous partnership. The Krevitar had chosen aggression. Now they would learn what that meant. HMS Executor dropped out of hyperspace 3 kilometers from the Krevitar fleet, close enough to be seen clearly, far enough to demonstrate confidence. Captain Thaddeus Rourke stood on the bridge, 48 years old now. The salt in his hair had spread. The pepper was almost gone. The scar across his left eye seemed deeper, more pronounced. He had commanded Executor for 6 years. Before that, other ships, other missions. He had been doing this work since he was 22. 26 years of bearing the burden. 26 years of choosing restraint when destruction would be easier. His forearms showed the cost. Dozens of scars now, each one a reminder, each one a choice. Tactical display, Rourke ordered. The holographic projection filled the bridge. 214 Krevitar warships in a defensive formation, overlapping fields of fire, coordinated sensor nets, professional deployment. Rourke's tactical officer, Lieutenant Sarah Chen, studied the formation. They're ready for us, Captain. This isn't like Haven. These are disciplined military vessels with experienced crews. Noted, Rourke said. Communications open a channel to the Krevitar flagship. Channel open, sir. Rourke's voice carried across the void. Ship to ship. His words would echo through 214 bridges simultaneously. Krevitar fleet, this is Captain Thaddeus Rourke of HMS Executor. You are in violation of Covenant territorial boundaries. Withdraw immediately to your own space. You have one opportunity to comply. On the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Torvak smiled. This was what he wanted, what he needed. A confrontation, a chance to prove that the humans could be challenged, could be defeated. One ship, Torvak said to his bridge crew. They send one ship against our entire fleet. Either the humans are suicidal or they believe their reputation is enough to frighten us. Today we prove that reputation is not reality. He activated his communication system. Human Captain, I am Admiral Torvak. We do not recognize Covenant authority. We do not acknowledge your jurisdiction. This space is contested. If you attempt to force us to leave, we will respond with all necessary force. Rourke's reply was immediate, calm, measured. Admiral, I am not here to debate territorial claims. I am here to enforce Covenant boundaries. You are in violation. Withdraw or I will remove you. Torvik laughed. You one ship, Captain. I have 214 warships. Combat veterans, proven crews. You cannot possibly believe you can force us to withdraw. I don't believe it, Admiral. I know it. You have 60 seconds to begin your withdrawal. Torvak felt anger rise. The arrogance, the absolute certainty in the human's voice. It was intolerable. Commander Gerald, tactical status. All ships report ready, Admiral. Weapons charged. Defensive systems at maximum. We have the executor surrounded. No matter how advanced their technology, they cannot evade 214 ships firing simultaneously. Torvik nodded. 30 seconds. Let them make the first move. Let the galaxy see that we only responded to human aggression. The countdown proceeded in silence. Both fleets, both commanders, both civilizations watching the clock. When it reached zero, Rourke spoke one word: execute. The space around every Krevtar warship suddenly changed. Reality bent, twisted. Gravitational fields formed at weapon emplacements, not ship-wide, hull-encompassing, precise, surgical, targeted exclusively at offensive systems. Energy cannons imploded. The superheated plasma meant for external targets suddenly had nowhere to go. It folded back on itself, consumed its own generation systems. Clean, controlled, non-lethal to the crew, but devastating to the weapons. Missile tubes collapsed. The ordnance inside was rendered inert. Gravitational compression squeezed warheads past their detonation thresholds without triggering explosions. The missiles simply ceased to be functional. Railguns twisted. The magnetic acceleration rails bent at impossible angles. Metal screamed. Systems failed. But no one died. 9.3 seconds. That's how long it took to disarm 214 warships. Not destroy them, not kill their crews, just remove every single offensive capability they possessed. On the Eternal Dominion, alarms screamed. Damage control teams scrambled. Engineers stared at readings that made no sense. Commander Zeral's voice was hollow, shocked. Admiral, all weapons offline. All ships reporting the same. We're defenseless. Torvak stared at the tactical display. His fleet still existed. Ships intact. Crews alive. But every weapon system showed red. Failed. Destroyed from within. Rourke's voice filled the silence. Krevtar fleet, you are hereby disarmed under the Warden Protocol. Your ships are intact. Your crews are unharmed. Your weapons are gone. You have two choices. Surrender peacefully and accept Covenant escort to your home space. Or resist, and I will begin targeting life support systems. Torvak felt something break inside him. 512 years, 3 centuries of command, 47 victories, and in 9.3 seconds it was over. Not because he had been outfought, but because he had never been in a fight at all. The humans had simply reached out and erased his fleet's ability to fight, like a parent disarming children. The humiliation was complete. Torvak's voice cracked. He tried again. We surrender. Wise choice, Admiral. Covenant vessels are inbound to escort you home. When you arrive, I recommend your government consider joining the Covenant. Next time we may not be so gentle. The channel closed. Torvak sank into his command chair. Around him, his bridge crew stood silent. Defeated without firing a shot. Disarmed without losing a single life. It was worse than death. It was irrelevance. The Krevtar High Council convened an emergency session 3 days later. The news had spread across their empire. 214 ships, disarmed, humiliated, sent home like misbehaving students. The debate lasted 14 hours. Hardliners demanded retaliation. Moderates counseled wisdom. The old guard clung to pride. The young saw pragmatism. The final vote was 8-4. The Krevtar Empire would petition to join the Warden Covenant. Not out of fear, not out of surrender, but out of recognition. Recognition that the galaxy had changed, that old ways no longer worked, that survival meant adaptation. Admiral Torvak resigned his commission the day the vote passed. He retired to a remote world. He would live another 400 years, but he would never command again. Some defeats you don't recover from. The decades that followed transformed the galaxy in ways no one had imagined. Species that had warred for millennia learned cooperation. Economies that had stagnated for centuries began to grow. The Covenant became more than an alliance. It became a community. But at the galactic rim, the Warden Early Warning Network detected faint distortions, growing stronger each year. Ripples in space-time that matched the architect's warnings. The Devourer was coming. Humanity had known for 237 years. The rest of the galaxy had known for only 2. But now they had time to prepare, to build, to unite. Fleet yards across 100 worlds began construction. Not just human designs, not just Covenant vessels, hybrid ships, technologies merged, the best of every species combined into something greater. Research stations analyzed the architect's data. Scientists from 89 species worked together, searching for weaknesses, developing strategies, planning for the impossible. Training academies taught new tactics. Humans trained Lumen in combat awareness. Lumen taught humans telepathic coordination. Krevtar warriors learned patience. Tyrell engineers learned improvisation. The galaxy prepared. And then, 150 years after Ambassador Greymark first stood on Bastion Station, the Devourer arrived. The stars at the galactic rim flickered and died. Not metaphorically, literally, entire star systems simply ceased to exist. Matter consumed, energy absorbed, converted to something else, something hungry, something vast. The Devourer swarm had arrived. Fleet Admiral Theron IV stood on the bridge of HMS Executor. The ship was old now, 150 years of continuous service. Its black hull bore scars from a dozen engagements. Repairs, upgrades. But the core remained. The singularity weapon at its heart still pulsed with ancient power. Theron was Lumen, great-grandson of the elder Theron, who had sent the first death word from Haven. But unlike his ancestor, Theron IV had been raised in a galaxy that knew violence, that understood war, that prepared for the ultimate battle. His skin glowed with soft blue light, but it was different from traditional lumen bioluminescence. Enhanced, augmented, human technology woven into lumen biology. He could survive in vacuum, process tactical data at superhuman speeds. His telepathic range spanned light seconds. He was the bridge, human discipline, lumen wisdom, the product of 150 years of cooperation. Around Executor, the Covenant fleet assembled. 40,000 ships, 89 species, every major civilization in the galaxy represented. The Krevtar sent 3,000 vessels. The Council contributed 6,000. Even small species who had nothing but courage sent what they could. And at the vanguard, 40 Warden-class ships, ancient architect technology, maintained, improved, ready. All ships report ready, Admiral, the communications officer announced. Theron looked at the tactical display. At the edge of the galaxy, the Devourer advanced. 100,000 bioships, organic vessels grown rather than built, each one capable of consuming a planet. Together they could devour the galaxy. But today, the galaxy would fight back. Signal all ships, Theron ordered. His voice carried the authority of 3 generations, the weight of 150 years of preparation. Hold the line. This is the threshold. The Devourer advances no further. The combined fleet acknowledged. 40,000 ships moved into formation, a wall across the galactic rim. Behind them, every inhabited world, every species, every life worth protecting. The Devourer swarm detected the fleet, paused. For the first time in 200,000 years of existence, it faced organized resistance. Not scattered remnants, not desperate last stands, but a unified force, ready, willing, capable. The bioships attacked. The first wave hit like a tsunami of living matter. 10,000 bioships surged forward, each one vast, writhing, hungry. Theron's telepathic network linked every lumen in the fleet, thousands of minds connected, sharing tactical awareness across light seconds. Human captains received battle data before their sensors could process it. Krevtar gunners fired at targets before they appeared on screens. The Covenant line held. Plasma fire lit the void. The bioships absorbed energy, adapted, evolved. But for every adaptation, the Covenant had a counter. Javask medical knowledge identified biological weak points. Tyrell engineers calculated optimal firing solutions. Human Warden-class vessels deployed singularity fields that nothing organic could cross. The first day ended with 3,000 bioships destroyed. The Covenant lost 800 vessels, 4,700 crew members dead. But the line held. The second day was worse. The Devourer adapted faster. Bioships began working in coordinated swarms. They consumed debris, grew larger, stronger. One massive bioship larger than any before broke through the Covenant line. Theron ordered the Executor and 5 other Warden-class vessels to intercept. The confrontation was brief, brutal. The bioship was huge, 5 kilometers across. It had consumed entire moons. Its mass was incomprehensible, its hunger infinite. The 6 Warden vessels formed a hexagonal pattern around it. Theron gave the order, singularity activation, full power. Space itself screamed, reality bent. The bioship tried to adapt, tried to evolve, but you cannot adapt to the fabric of existence being torn apart around you. The bioship collapsed into a point smaller than an atom, then vanished. Gone. Erased from reality. But the cost was high. Two of the Warden vessels were damaged beyond repair. Their singularity weapons burned out from the strain. They withdrew from the line. The second day ended with 7,000 bioships destroyed. The Covenant lost 4,000 ships, 39,200 crew members dead. Entire species had contributed their only vessels. Those crews were gone now, sacrificed, remembered. But the line held. The third day decided everything. The Devourer committed its full force. 90,000 bioships, every adaptation, every evolution, every lesson learned from 200,000 years of consuming galaxies. They came as one. Theron felt the telepathic network strain. Too much data, too many minds. The network began to fracture. Lumen across the fleet screamed as the psychic overload threatened to break them. But then something unexpected happened. Humans joined the network. It shouldn't have been possible. Humans weren't telepathic. But 150 years of partnership had changed things. Lumen telepathy, human neural augmentation, Krevtar combat discipline, Tyrell analytical processing. The network stabilized. Not just Lumen now, 89 species, 40,000 minds, acting as one. Theron saw the entire battlefield at once. Every ship, every weapon, every possibility, and in that moment of perfect awareness, he understood how to win. Vessels, Theron ordered. Synchronized singularity pulse. On my mark. 38 Warden-class ships. 38 singularity weapons. They had never been fired simultaneously before. The power requirements were too high. The spatial distortions too dangerous. But desperate times demanded desperate measures. Mark. 38 points of folded space appeared across the battlefield. Between them, gravitational fields linked. Formed a web, a barrier, a wall that nothing could cross. The Devourer swarm hit the barrier at full speed and stopped. For the first time in 200,000 years, the Devourer could not advance, could not consume, could not win. The bioships pressed against the barrier, adapted, evolved, but you cannot evolve past physics, cannot adapt to mathematics. The singularity web held. For 6 hours, the barrier held the Devourer at bay. Behind it, the Covenant fleet regrouped, resupplied, prepared for the final push. When the barrier finally collapsed, the Covenant was ready. The counterattack was precise, coordinated, devastating. 40,000 ships firing as one. Every weapon, every strategy, every tactic learned over 150 years. The bioships fell back, retreated. For the first time, the Devourer withdrew. Not destroyed, not defeated permanently, but stopped, turned back, forced to retreat. The third day ended with the galactic rim secure. The Covenant had lost 12,000 ships total, 347,000 crew members dead. Species that had contributed everything, lost everything. But the line had held. The Devourer retreated to the void between galaxies. It would return in 10,000 years. In 100,000 someday. The cycle would continue. But now the galaxy was ready. Now they knew the threat. Now they stood together. Eldon Greymark stood in the Memorial Garden on Bastion Station. He was 223 years old now. Human medical technology had extended his life far beyond natural Talaran limits. But age still claimed him. Slowly, inevitably. His silver skin was now almost white, his movements careful, assisted by subtle exoskeleton technology. But his mind remained sharp, his eyes clear. He looked at the memorial before him. A simple stone, elegant, understated. Admiral Cordelia Ravencroft, born 2028, died 2047. She chose burden over glory. The galaxy endures because of her choice. Ravencroft had died 20 years ago at the age of 191. Still in service, still commanding, still bearing the weight she had accepted so long ago. She had lived to see the Covenant form, to see 89 species unite, to see the preparations complete, but not to see the Devourer defeated. Greymark hoped she knew somehow that wherever consciousness went after death, she understood that her life's work had mattered. Footsteps behind him, slow, measured, the soft tap of a cane on stone. High Arbiter. Greymark turned. Captain Thaddeus Rourke approached, except he wasn't a captain anymore. He had retired 30 years ago. Now he was just Rourke, an old man, 196 years old, white-haired, face lined with 2 centuries of life. but his eyes still sharp, still aware. The cane was carved wood, earthwood, oak, a gift from his home world. He moved carefully, but with dignity. "Captain," Greymark said, "I still can't call you anything else." Rourke smiled. "Old habits." They stood together at the memorial. Two old beings who had lived through the transformation of everything they knew. "She would have been proud," Rourke said quietly. "The battle of the threshold, 89 species standing together. That's what she wanted, what she worked for." "She would have been there," Greymark said, leading from the front. "You know she would have." "Yes." Rourke's voice carried weight. "Memory. She always did." They were silent for a moment. The memorial garden was peaceful. Earth flowers grew alongside alien plants. Lumen light trees cast gentle illumination. Species from across the galaxy contributed to this place. A shared space. A common ground. "Did we do the right thing?" Greymark asked. "All those years ago, opening contact, building the covenant. We changed the galaxy forever." Rourke looked at him. 2,000 lumen lived at Haven because we answered their call. 89 species survived the Devourer because we stood together. "Yes, High Arbiter, we did the right thing. But the cost is always high," Rourke finished. 347,000 dead at the threshold. 12,000 ships lost. Entire fleets destroyed. The cost of survival is measured in sacrifice. But Ravencroft knew that. She taught me. Each scar I bear is a reminder that restraint, not destruction, defines true strength. Greymark nodded slowly. The galaxy learned that lesson. 89 species stand today because humans chose burden over domination. Because you chose to be guardians instead of conquerors. "And because one old diplomat believed we were worth understanding," Rourke said. "Because you broke every protocol to save people you'd never met. Because you risked everything to do what was right. Don't diminish your role in this, High Arbiter. The Covenant exists because you built the first bridge." They walked together through the garden, two old beings near the end of their journeys. Behind them, the memorial stood silent. Above them, Earth turned peacefully. In orbit, the Covenant fleet held station. 40,000 ships, 89 species, the largest unified force in galactic history, damaged, depleted, but unbroken. The Devourer had retreated to the galactic void, but it would return in 10,000 years, in 100,000, someday. The cycle would continue. But now the galaxy was ready. Now they knew the threat. Now they stood together. Greymark and Roark reached the observation deck. The great window showed Earth below. Cities glittered on the night side. Oceans reflected starlight. A small blue world that had changed everything. "Will they be ready?" Greymark asked. "The next generation, when the Devourer returns." Rourke looked at the planet that had given birth to the Wardens. The world that had found ancient weapons and chosen restraint over conquest. "They'll be ready," Rourke said, "because we taught them. Because Ravencroft taught us. Because you believed when others doubted. The Warden Protocol endures, not because of ships or weapons or technology, but because of choices. The right choices, made again and again across generations." Greymark felt peace settle over him. He was old, tired, his work was done, others would carry forward. Younger beings, stronger, better prepared, the Covenant would endure. The galaxy would survive. And somewhere someday, when the Devourer returned, the children of this age would stand where they stood now. Ready, united, unbroken. "Thank you, Captain," Greymark said quietly. "For what?" "For answering the call. All those years ago at Haven, everything that followed came from that moment, from your choice to help." Rourke smiled. "We didn't have a choice, High Arbiter. Someone asked for help, so we helped. That's what Guardians do." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching Earth turn, watching the stars shine, watching the future take shape in the darkness. Somewhere in that darkness, the Devourer waited, patient, eternal, hungry. But the galaxy was no longer afraid. The galaxy was ready. The galaxy stood together. And at the center of it all, small and blue and beautiful Earth reminded them why they fought, why they sacrificed, why they endured. Not for conquest, not for glory, not for power, but because someone had to. Because the strong protect the weak. Because guardians answer when called. The Warden Protocol endured. 89 species, one covenant. The galaxy had learned the hardest lesson. The strongest thing in the universe was not the power to destroy. It was the wisdom to choose not to. And that wisdom, hard-won and dearly bought, would light the way forward. For generations yet unborn. For battles yet unfought. For a future worth protecting. The stars shone eternal. The Guardians stood watch, and the galaxy united at last looked toward tomorrow with hope instead of fear. The Wardens had answered the call, and the galaxy answered back. Together, forever, ready.